Hi, I'm Marjorie, and my son took every penny I saved, gave it to his wife's business, then told me I should be grateful just to live in the house I paid for. They erased me, quietly. No seat at my granddaughter's birthday. No name on the business I funded. No mention in the life I built. And when I finally pushed back, they called me a threat. How did a mother become a stranger in her own family? And why did it take losing everything to finally remember who I was? Stay with me. This story isn't just mine. Maybe it's yours too. I was folding laundry at the kitchen table when the phone rang. Not my cell phone, but the old landline Jared insisted on keeping for emergencies. I picked it up out of habit, expecting some robocall or maybe a wrong number. Instead, I heard a cheerful woman from my bank confirming a $280,000 transfer I initiated that morning. I don't remember standing. One minute I was staring at a pair of Odette's tiny socks, and the next I was gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Excuse me?" I asked. The woman repeated the amount, the date, the destination, Varney Wellness, LLC. That was Isolde's business, the spa she had always dreamed of starting, the one she said would change their lives. My retirement savings had been the bridge between a dream and a storefront in downtown Frisco. Except now I realized I hadn't been a partner. I'd been the bank. The call ended with a polite thank you and a suggestion to contact their legal team for any questions regarding consent. Consent. That word stuck like something sour between my teeth. I hung up and turned slowly. Jared was in the living room, sprawled across the sectional, flipping through TV channels like it was any other Tuesday. I walked in quietly. "Jared," I said, my voice calmer than I felt, "did you authorize a transfer from my account?" He didn't even look up. "Yeah, for the spa. You signed the paperwork, remember?" I blinked. "What paperwork?" "The stuff from the dinner last year, don't you remember? You said you trusted me." My memory flashed. A dinner 18 months ago. Chicken casserole, wine, candles lit like it was Thanksgiving. Isolde had brought a laptop, showed me graphs, talked about wellness trends and client loyalty programs. Jared held my hand across the table, his eyes damp. "We just need a little help, Mom. Just one time. I swear we'll pay you back in full." They slid over some documents. "Just a simple agreement," Isolde had said. "A formality." I signed. I didn't read it all, not carefully. I was embarrassed not to understand the legalese, and I didn't want to seem suspicious of my own son. Turns out, I'd given him power of attorney broad enough to move mountains or clean out my life savings. Later that week, I went to see the spa. I hadn't visited since they opened. They were always too busy, or Odette had a cold, or Isolde needed quiet to center the brand energy. But I went. Alone. The place was beautiful. Clean lines, soft lighting, gentle music. There were framed photographs of Isolde smiling with clients, press clippings of local features, glossy brochures neatly fanned on the table. I picked one up. My name wasn't in it. Not once. I asked to speak with Isolde. She came out in her spa uniform, all pastels and perfume. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Marjorie, is everything okay?" "I just had a question," I said, holding up the brochure. "Why isn't my name here, or mentioned on the website? Anywhere?" She blinked. "Oh, well, your family. It's different. We didn't want to confuse clients. It's a brand thing." I nodded slowly. "A brand thing." I left without saying another word. Back at the house, I walked past Jared and Odette, building a Lego castle on the floor. I stepped into the hallway that led to the guest room, my room, and saw it. A framed business license hung on the wall, large, official-looking, gleaming under the hallway light. Varney Wellness, LLC owner. Isolde Varney. I stared at it for a long time. My name wasn't there either. No mention, no thanks, no trace. It wasn't just the money they took. It was my place, my contribution, my signature, reduced to invisible ink. I was no longer part of the dream. I was just the woman who paid for it. A week passed. though it felt like a quiet eternity. I moved through Jared's house like a shadow, present but unnoticed. The framed business license still hung in the hallway, gleaming like a trophy I'd never win. I hadn't brought up the money since the bank call. But this morning, as we sat in the living room while Odette built block towers nearby, I decided it was time. "Jared," I began, keeping my voice low, measured. "About the transfer. We need to talk about repayment, a plan." He didn't look up from his phone. "Mom, not now." "It's been a week. I think it's reasonable." Isolde walked in from the kitchen, coffee in hand, a smile too sweet to be genuine. "Marjorie, we're in a really tight spot right now. The business is still growing. You know how startups work." I nodded, biting back the response I wanted to give. She crouched beside Odette, brushing hair from her little face. "Besides, Odette's been picking up on the tension. She asked if Grandma was mad at Mommy and Daddy. We're trying to keep things peaceful for her." It hit me harder than I expected. The implication was sharp, deliberate. Speak up, and you're the reason your granddaughter loses sleep. Cause a ripple, and you're the storm. I looked at Odette, her innocent focus on building something fragile and temporary, like the peace in this house. "I see," I murmured. I always saw more than they realized. Isolde smiled as if we'd reached some unspoken understanding. "We really do appreciate you being here. You've always been so supportive. Honestly, it's a blessing you're not like other parents." My eyebrows lifted. "What do you mean?" She gave a soft chuckle, leaning on the armrest beside me. "You should be thankful we still want you around. Not all parents are this lucky. Most older folks end up elsewhere." There was no malice in her tone. That made it worse. I smiled back, the kind of smile I'd worn through funerals and faculty meetings, tight, polite, and holding back a flood. That evening, while Jared and Isolde cooked dinner and Odette watched cartoons, I sat quietly in my room and looked at the framed photo of Jared as a newborn. My husband had passed just 3 months after that picture was taken. I was 29, broke, and scared out of my mind. I remember feeding Jared with a bottle in one hand and grading student essays with the other, selling my engagement ring to pay for his school uniform, taking on summer shifts at the library just to afford his textbooks. When his car broke down junior year, I used my tax refund, money I'd planned to use for new glasses, to fix it. I didn't think about those sacrifices often, but tonight, they refused to stay buried. Now, I was the one without a car, without a room of her own, sleeping in a guest space filled with boxed Christmas decorations. I wasn't family. I was a placeholder, a reminder of a favor they'd rather forget. Odette laughed from the other room. The sound pierced me. Her laugh still sounded like Jared's when he was her age, raspy and unfiltered, a tiny joy. That laugh kept me tethered. I couldn't leave, not yet, but I could retreat. That night, I logged into the shared. Jared knocked on my bedroom door the morning of the awards ceremony. I was still in my robe, folding laundry again. There's a rhythm in repetition, a kind of peace in neatly stacked towels, even when your world feels anything but neat. "Mom," he said, not stepping inside. "We're leaving in an hour. Be ready, okay?" "Ready for what?" He sighed. "Isolde's getting an award tonight. You know, the business thing? Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Big deal. Community press, influencers, all that. She really wants the whole family there." I stared at the pile of folded clothes in my lap. "The whole family," I repeated. He nodded, already turning away. "Just try to smile. It's her night." An hour later, I sat in the back seat of Jared's SUV while Isolde applied lipstick in the passenger mirror. Odette was at home with a sitter. Apparently, events like these were too stimulating for children. I watched the city blur by through the window, every turn taking us further from anything that still felt like mine. The Frisco Mall event space was decked in white and gold. A banner stretched across the room. Frisco Business Excellence Awards. Round tables with candles, a buffet of catered finger foods, and a makeshift stage flanked by monitors. I found a seat near the back, just as Isolde was whisked toward the front by an event coordinator with a clipboard and a headset. Jared followed her, adjusting his blazer. I sat alone. The slideshow started 15 minutes in. One by one, photos of Isolde's spa filled the screens. Before and after shots of the building, smiling clients, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, even a candid of her consulting with designers. They played a video montage next. She narrated, voice soft and clear. It started as a vision, a wellness center for real women. With hard work, sleepless nights, and a little faith, I built it from the ground up. There wasn't a single picture of me. Not from the launch, not from the funding discussions, not even from the dinner where I signed away my savings. No mention, no nod, not even a blink in my direction. Just applause. I stayed seated, hands folded. I felt like a ghost invited to witness a funeral. Mine. Later, while guests mingled, I walked to the back of the hall where Isolde was posing for photos in front of her new branding banner. It was cream-colored with pale pink accents, her spa's logo in elegant serif font, her own face centered above the tagline, "Created for wellness, built by passion." I waited for a pause, then stepped in. "Isolde," I said gently. She turned, smile still fixed in place, but her eyes hesitated. "Marjorie, you made it." I held up a program. "I saw the presentation." She nodded brightly. "Wasn't it beautiful? We've worked so hard." "Yes," I said, quieter now, "but I didn't see my name anywhere." Her smile twitched, but stayed. "We wanted to keep the story simple. Cleaner, you know. Less complicated." "Cleaner," I repeated. "It's not personal, it's branding," she added quickly. "Most people don't care about backers. They care about faces." I nodded, stepping back. "Of course." That night, back at the house, Jared carried in a leftover flower arrangement from the table centerpiece. "She won," he said. "Whole room cheered. Even the mayor stopped by." I smiled without showing teeth. "I saw." He set the flowers on the kitchen counter and left to take a call. I walked over to the fridge. There, held up by a rose gold magnet shaped like a heart, was a printed article from a local blog. "Self-made success. Isolde Varney's rise in the wellness world." I stared at it for a few long seconds. Then I gently removed it, folded it in half, and slid it into the drawer where we keep the utility bills and expired coupons. I didn't join them for dinner. From upstairs, I could hear the clink of forks, the low hum of the TV. They were serving steak, Isolde's favorite, medium rare, with the rosemary butter I used to make. I didn't miss the food. I didn't miss the table. I was chewing something else. They served steak. I chewed silence. They told me to come late, after the guests have settled. Jared texted me the night before with that exact phrasing. I reread it 3 times, thinking maybe I misunderstood. But no, the message was clear. Arrive after everything is already in motion. So I did. I waited until the backyard was full of balloons and laughter and the smell of catered barbecue. I heard voices rising over the fence as I made my way around the side of the house. Odette's 7th birthday party. The theme was pastel rainbows and spa day chic, as if even her childhood had to match the Varney wellness brand. When I stepped into the yard, I paused. A dozen round tables, covered in gauzy pink tablecloths, filled the space. Streamers hung from the patio. There were guests, neighbors, Jared's co-workers, moms from Odette's class. A photographer floated around, snapping candid moments. No one noticed me. I scanned the tables. Some had little placards with names scribbled in gold ink. Reserved, Grandma Varney. Reserved, Godparents. Reserved, Media Rep. I found no Grandma Hale. No seat, no space. I hovered near the hedge, unsure where to stand. A woman in a floral dress brushed past me and paused. "Are you one of the staff?" she asked, eyeing my plain cardigan. I blinked. "No, just family." She offered a tight smile and walked on. Jared saw me a few minutes later, waved once, then disappeared again. I caught a glimpse of him near the bounce house, laughing too loudly at something a dad in a polo shirt said. Isolde finally walked over, perfectly put together in a white sundress that somehow stayed pristine despite the outdoor heat. She was holding a cupcake. "Marjorie," she said, with her usual saccharine drawl. "So glad you made it." I glanced around. "I didn't see a place card." She laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, I'm sorry. We had so many names to juggle. We figured you'd just find a comfy spot wherever." She handed me the cupcake. No candle, no frosting design. Just a placeholder. "Thanks," I murmured, but she was already halfway back to her circle of friends. I stood for a moment longer, then made my way to the back steps and sat down on the edge. My hands rested in my lap, one still holding the cupcake. I didn't eat it. About an hour passed. I watched the games, the gift unwrapping, the carefully orchestrated surprise celebrity guest appearance from a local kids' party entertainer. I clapped when others clapped. I smiled when someone pointed a camera in my direction. Then I slipped into the house. The front room was empty. Everyone was still outside. I walked quietly down the hallway toward Odette's room. The gift I'd bought her, an embroidered quilt with all her favorite storybook characters, was tucked under my arm. When I reached the door, I reached for the knob. "Marjorie?" Isolde's voice. I turned. She was standing a few feet behind me, hands clasped in front of her like a school principal addressing a parent. "I was just going to leave this in her room," I explained. She stepped closer, still polite. "I know, it's just..." Odette's therapist really emphasized the importance of keeping her space emotionally clean. Familiar energies only, you understand? I didn't respond right away. "I'm sure you meant well," she added, "but she's been very sensitive to certain tones and presences lately." Certain tones, certain presences. I handed her the gift. "Thanks," she said, not unkindly, and turned away. I returned to the backyard and sat by the hedge again, but it felt colder this time. Years ago, I used to bake Odette's cakes from scratch. I'd make little paper crowns, personalized for each guest. Jared once told me those were his favorite childhood memories. Me in the kitchen, flour on my nose, dancing with a wooden spoon. Now I was a footnote. No, not even that. Footnotes get printed. No one said my name once during the party. That night, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about calling someone, anyone. I didn't. Instead, I picked up my phone and sent Jared a message. "You're pushing me somewhere I may not come back from." He didn't respond. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table, my coffee cooling untouched in front of me. The house was quiet except for the faint clatter of Jared pulling cereal boxes from the pantry. Isolde moved through the kitchen like a hostess at a hotel buffet, humming something off-key as she arranged Odette's lunchbox. I waited. Jared finally broke the silence. "So, about that text you sent last night." I said nothing. Just lifted my coffee, sipped, and set it down again. He pulled out a chair across from me and sat, arms folded. "Look, I know things have been tense, but this is Odette's home. Isolde's too. We all need to feel comfortable." I watched him closely. "And I make that difficult?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the living room, like hoping someone else would say the hard part for him. Isolde did. From the sink, she spoke up. Tone calm, casual. "Marjorie, no one's trying to make you feel unwelcome. But the energy lately, it's not healthy, for any of us." Jared picked up her thread. "Exactly. That's why we've been thinking. Maybe it's time we set some expectations, boundaries." "Expectations," I repeated. "We want you here," he said, hands opening like an offering. "But only if it stays peaceful. If that's not possible, there are really great communities for seniors. Assisted living places with..." I raised a hand. Not sharply, just enough to stop him mid-sentence. "So I'm welcome, as long as I'm quiet." Isolde stepped closer, arms crossed gently. We just don't want drama. That's all. My palms were flat on the table. I pressed them down harder, grounding myself. I had raised this man, nursed him through chickenpox, scraped knees, and heartbreak. I had been the one who skipped meals so he could eat better. I had stayed up nights watching over his fever, praying to a God I wasn't even sure I believed in. And now, here I was, offered shelter under conditions. Conditional love, packaged as concern. I looked at Jared, and in that moment, he looked more like a stranger borrowing my son's face. "Let me be clear," I said. "If I'm here as a warning label, not as a mother, I can find my own shelter." His jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. Isolde glanced at him, then sat down, placing her coffee on a coaster with unnecessary grace. "There's no need for ultimatums, Marjorie," she said smoothly. "We're just being honest. We all want the same thing." "No," I replied. "You want compliance. I want dignity. Those are not the same." We sat there in silence. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock and the clink of Isolde's spoon in her cup. Jared cleared his throat. "You're not being fair." "Neither are you," I said, standing, "but I stopped expecting fairness a while ago." I picked up my cup, took one final sip, and walked it to the sink. I rinsed it clean, set it gently on the rack, and turned back. Jared couldn't look at me. Isolde held my gaze, but behind her calm was something else. Amusement? Contempt? I wasn't sure, but she sipped her coffee again, slow and steady, like she was watching the last act of a movie she already knew the ending to. That morning, I realized, I was the only one at that table who still saw me as family. Monday started the same as any other. Jared off to work early, Isolde attending her staff alignment session at the spa, and Odette already out the door with her backpack bouncing behind her. I stood alone in the kitchen, coffee cooling on the counter, flipping through the Frisco business bulletin that had arrived in the mailbox with the usual pile of junk. Isolde's face smiled up at me from page 4. Varney Wellness expands. New franchise deal finalized. There it was. A paragraph about visionary leadership, independent growth, and self-funded ambition. No mention of investors, certainly no mention of me. But that wasn't what made my stomach tighten. It was the contract date printed at the bottom of the article. 3 months ago. The same week, Isolde had handed me a document late one night, said it was a routine banking update, asked me to initial here. I didn't need a lawyer to guess what I'd signed. By noon, I was sitting in a booth at Cornerstone Cafe, an old place downtown that still served drip coffee in mismatched mugs. Across from me sat Cassian Doyle. We hadn't spoken in years. He used to be my late husband's friend. After Michael passed, Cassian had offered to help with some paperwork, and though I never took him up on it back then, I remembered his card. "This isn't just a family favor," I told him. "They used me, legally." He scanned the printouts I'd brought, flipping with quick, quiet fingers. "You were listed as a guarantor," he confirmed. "This binds your estate to any franchise debt." I nodded once. I want it revoked. That afternoon, we filed a formal withdrawal of financial consent and initiated a forensic review of Varney Wellness's accounting for any use of my funds beyond the original amount. 3 days later, I stopped by the pharmacy to refill my cholesterol meds. I inserted my debit card as usual. Declined. I tried again. Declined. The cashier glanced at me, then the screen. "Do you want to try a different card?" I didn't have one. I paid in cash, what I had left from my last withdrawal, and walked out with my paper bag rattling in my hand. That evening, I logged into the bank portal from the privacy of my room. Jared had removed me as an authorized user on the household account. No notification, no conversation, just erased. I didn't cry. I didn't call him out. I called Cassian. 2 days later, an envelope was sent by certified mail to Varney Wellness, addressed to Isolde Varney, CEO. It included a cease and desist order regarding use of my name or financial standing, and a formal audit request for the past 18 months. Cassian said, "You understand this might trigger some noise." "I'm counting on it," I replied. That night, well past dinner, I sat in bed with a paperback open and my reading glasses sliding down my nose. The knock came fast, 3 hard raps. The door swung open. Jared stood there, red-faced, jaw tight. "What did you do?" I didn't flinch. I didn't close my book. I did what I should have done the moment you thought I was just a blank check. He didn't say anything else. He just stared at me, searching for the version of me he could still manipulate. But she wasn't there. It came in a thick cream envelope. No return address, just my name typed cleanly in the center. I found it tucked between a flyer for pest control and a discount coupon for dry cleaning. It was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that should have passed without note. I brought it inside, set it on the counter, and stared at it while the kettle boiled. The weight of the envelope was enough to make my hand ache. I didn't need to open it to know it was trouble, but I did. The first few lines were a blur, but then one phrase jumped out and slapped me across the face. Cease and desist. They were warning me, legally, that if I interfered again with Varney wellness operations, they would pursue legal action. Language like defamation, tortious interference, and breach of financial confidentiality stood out like cuts in the paper. But that wasn't the worst part. The signature at the bottom read, "Valora Hale, Escure's my daughter. My quiet, even-keeled baby girl. The one who used to call every Sunday, even if she only had 5 minutes. The one who'd slipped a card into my purse 2 birthdays ago that said, 'Thank you for never giving up on us.' And now, this." I read her name again, printed in perfect serif. Below it, her title, Counsel for Varney Holdings, LLC. I sat at the table and held the letter in both hands. No shaking, no tears. Just the soft shift of something internal, like a final rope snapping loose. Valora had known everything. I told her months ago about the money, the contracts, the spa. She'd nodded, listened, even agreed it felt wrong. "I'm not getting involved," she had said, "but I'm here for you." She was never loud, never confrontational, just quiet and precise, like a scalpel. Now I saw why. The next hour passed without sound. I didn't vacuum. I didn't put in laundry. I walked to my bedroom, sat down on the edge of the bed, and reread the letter 3 more times. Each word became sharper, cleaner, meaner. Not angry, just professional. Detached. Like I didn't matter anymore. Not as a mother, not as a person. Just a name that needed silencing. I let the paper slide from my fingers and land on the carpet. I thought of Valora as a toddler, curled up on the couch with her blanket, whispering stories to herself. She used to cling to my leg when I dropped her at preschool. I remembered her first year of law school, how proud I was when she argued me into silence at the dinner table. I used to laugh when she bested me. Now she'd turned that skill into a scalpel, and I was the target. By late afternoon, the sun had dropped just low enough to throw the backyard into soft amber. I walked outside barefoot, letter still in hand. The ground was warm. The air smelled faintly of jasmine from Isolde's planter box. I didn't cry, but something inside me rearranged itself. Not broke, just moved. Shifted into a space I hadn't touched in years. I stood there for a long time. Then I turned back inside, picked up the cordless phone from its charger, and dialed Cassian's number from memory. He picked up after the second ring. "Marjorie?" "We're going to do this properly now," I said. A pause. Then, "All right, tell me everything." I hung up and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. My reflection didn't flinch. If they wanted war, they should have remembered who taught them how to survive. The courthouse in Frisco doesn't look like much. Brick, glass, a few uneven parking spaces out front. But that morning, as I walked through its doors with a binder pressed to my chest, it felt like something ancient and sacred. Like truth had finally been given a mailing address. Cassian met me just inside security. His suit was crisp, his briefcase worn in the corners. He didn't speak right away, just nodded at me like we'd trained for this. We had. Jared and Isolde arrived late, of course. Matching gray tones, mirrored sunglasses, and a sense of entitlement that practically echoed across the hallway. Jared gave me a half smile, as if we were passing each other at a church potluck. Isolde didn't look at me at all. The courtroom wasn't large. A dozen pew-like benches on each side. A judge behind the bench, whose face looked like she'd seen too many families forget how to love each other. We were called to the front, and then it began. Cassian opened with a single sentence. "This is not a matter of business. This is a matter of betrayal masked as bookkeeping." He handed the judge a packet of documents. Bank records, the original house deed, signed acknowledgments from Isolde regarding the spa funding. I watched Jared shift in his seat, fingers tapping his knee like a bad habit. Isolde remained frozen, chin slightly lifted. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up slowly, both palms flat on the small wooden table before me. "I'm not here for vengeance," I said. "I'm here for clarity." I looked at Jared, then at Isolde, and finally toward the judge. This isn't about the money, it's about memory, mine, what I gave, what was taken. I sold my house, my last piece of independence, not for a return on investment, but for family. I was told this business was our future, and now I'm being evicted from a home my money bought, silenced in a company my name funded, erased from the lives I helped build. There was a pause long enough to make the air in the room feel heavier. Jared leaned forward to speak. "Your Honor, with all due respect, my mother has had difficulties, emotional inconsistencies. She's made threats, and the truth is, it's been increasingly difficult to live together peacefully." Cassian stood without waiting for permission. "We have documentation of the financial contributions Mrs. Hale made from the proceeds of her previous home, including the cashier's checks used for down payment and remodeling of the property in question. This is not an emotional claim, it's a legal fact." The judge asked a few questions, requested clarity on timelines, and then announced a short recess. Outside in the hallway, Jared cornered me, his voice low. "What are you trying to prove?" "That I existed," I said, "that I mattered." Back in court, the judge returned with a calm but decisive ruling. My name would be legally removed from all franchise documentation, my financial liability voided, and regarding the home, the petition to remain under shared ownership was denied. I would be legally disassociated from the house, freeing Jared to refinance or sell as he pleased. I felt no sting, only space. By late afternoon, Cassian and I stood on the courthouse steps beneath a sky just beginning to gray. "You still want to do the estate directive?" he asked. "Yes." An hour later, at a quiet office down the street, I signed the final paperwork. My new will listed one beneficiary, the Michael Hale Memorial Scholarship Fund, managed by the local community college to support students in grief who had lost a parent. I didn't take back the house. I took back the story. The plants on my balcony don't need much. A little morning sun, a dash of water, and they keep growing. Some days I just sit out there with a coffee, listening to the birds argue in the branches. My new place isn't big. It doesn't need to be. There's enough room for me, my books, and the silence I choose. After years of swallowing silence not of my choosing, that difference means everything. It's not about square footage. It's about breathing space. I hadn't planned on starting over at 67. But then again, I hadn't planned on being sued by my own daughter either, or finding out that my name had become more useful in a bank form than in a birthday invitation. About a month after the court ruling, I ended up at the urgent care with chest pains. It turned out to be indigestion, nothing more, but the nurse asked the standard intake question, "Do you have someone we should call?" I looked at her for a long moment. Then I shook my head. "No, thank you." That night, lying in a hospital bed with a plastic wristband tight around my skin, I made peace with a truth I'd resisted for too long. Whatever I thought family owed me, Whatever comfort I thought would someday arrive if I just waited long enough, it wasn't coming. 2 days later, I unpacked the last box in my Plano apartment. I found the pillow from the sofa they had me sleep on. The one beside the hallway bathroom, where the light buzzed all night and the smell of bleach never quite faded. I used to think of that couch as a punishment, a quiet way of telling me I was temporary. But now, I look at that pillow and think, no, it was survival. Even exile becomes sanctuary when you decide not to beg your way back inside. I don't talk to Jared. I haven't heard from Isolde. Odette, I miss. But even that ache is cleaner now. It no longer burns. It pulses gently, like a reminder that love and harm should never share the same skin. I journal. I volunteer twice a week at a literacy center, helping women older than me learn to read again, to find their voice again. I quilt. I bake for my neighbors. I walk more than I used to, and I sleep through the night. I used to think legacy was about inheritance. Now I think it's about intention. It's what you build when no one's watching. It's the kindness you extend without an audience. I didn't leave behind a fortune, but I left behind a story that was mine. One morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single sheet. No apologies, no grand confessions. Just, I understand now why you did it. Maybe one day we'll talk. Valora. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer next to my electric bill and the lease agreement. I didn't cry. I smiled, because I wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. I was never just their mother. I was, and still am, my own beginning. I closed my journal, stood up, and walked to the window. The afternoon sun poured in, warm against my skin. Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of your own name, said with kindness, finally, by you. There's something you learn, quietly, when you've lived long enough. Love is not always kind, and family is not always safe. I gave everything I had, believing that being a good mother meant giving without limits. But I've learned that boundaries don't make you bitter. They make you brave. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, know this. You are not alone, and you are not powerless. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the people you love? Let me know in the comments. Type 1 if this story hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't enjoy it, that's okay too. Share why, and what part didn't connect. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that speak to the heart, don't forget to subscribe. Your voice matters here.